Today, I'm up in Leeds at the Yorkshire Skin Centre where I'm going to meet Dr Raj Thethi and find out all about NeoGen Plasma. Now, this is an energy-based treatment. If it's ringing a bell, it may be because you saw the amazing results it gave Shirley Ballas earlier this year. Yes, her off Strictly. She got a real tightening on her jawline. And what this treatment can do is clear pigmentation, stimulate collagen production, and also tighten the skin. So I'm going to go and find out all about it. It's quite a complicated thing to explain. And I'm going to try the treatment myself, and I'm going to have a medium depth treatment and see what it can do for me. So come along, we'll find out.
NeoGen is a really, really beautiful device because it's so versatile and works on so many different levels. I can give it to my practitioners and they can do some superficial work with it. But if we needed to do deeper medical treatments, we can do those.
I do want to ask about what makes NeoGen Plasma different from other energy-based treatments. But first, can you explain what this plasma actually is? Because it's a really confusing term for a lot of us.
Yeah, plasma and the NeoGen, it's a very, very specific thing. So it's not the same as platelet-rich plasma, which we take blood from your arm. It's not the same as that, or blood-based plasma. That's also different. There's also something called a plasma pen. It's not that either. It's very different to that. I'll explain why in a minute. This is specifically nitrogen-based plasma. The word plasma itself is referring to the fourth state of matter. So if we use water as an example, if you've got any solids, you've got ice, you heat it up, we'll get water, we'll get liquid. If you heat up a liquid, you'll get a gas. If you heat up a gas high enough, you eventually form plasma. We're using ultra-high radio frequency energy that basically is passed through the nitrogen, which means you get pure nitrogen plasma that then comes out of the device. The amount of plasma that's generated, the depth that will go to, and the strength that will give it, and the amount of downtime that will give is completely dependent on what the machine is doing. And we can control that completely down to the millimeter. And also, we can go deeper in certain areas and less deep in other areas, depending on what effect we want to try and achieve.
Okay, so we've got the nitrogen plasma that is doing the aesthetic work here. That's the energy source. And how is it different from other energy-based treatments? Because I think a lot of people would put it in the same bucket as maybe radiofrequency microneedling or CO2 laser even.
So it's very different to those because, and the crucial fact is that it's pure nitrogen-based plasma rather than anything else. I think the best way to describe the difference is to compare it to a plasma pen, actually. So a plasma pen would be is still plasma, but it uses the atmospheric air, which contains oxygen. So upon the creation of plasma, you've got oxygen present when it hits the skin, which is oxygen is a fire starter. So you essentially are charring and causing a micro burn in the skin. And if you do enough of those, then the principle is that it causes contraction and causes tightening. But it can also leave you with scarring and pigmentation. So with nitrogen-based plasma, you just get a pure plasma hit from the nitrogen and there's no oxygen involved, which means that there isn't actually a break in the skin surface. You're not burning anything. There's no oxygen. So that means that unlike microneedling, where you're causing physical ruptures inside the skin surface and you're going down to a depth and releasing the energy, this will hit the surface of the skin and give you what we call a non-viable layer. So it's a zone of damage that is non-viable, will mostly dead anyway.
Killing it
and that
off.
will come off. It will come off anyway. But actually, it will then create another area where the heat penetrates and drizzles down that creates this thermal modification. So the thermal modification happens over the course of a few months to get the full result. And we're getting contraction of the fibroreceptor network in the fat, and we're also getting some of the dermal thickening, so increasing collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid.
It's contracting the fat, it's stimulating the collagen, it's getting rid of the dead surface layers. So is that taking off pigmentation?
Exactly, yeah. So we get that. So depending on the depth of treatment that we go to, we could go for a superficial treatment, a kind of a spa level treatment, if you wanted just a bit of light resurfacing, through to a deeper treatment where if we wanted to, we could attack pigmentation. If we get it to the right layer, any pigment sat in the skin normally gets lifted off, which can be really useful. So it's kind of like, it's being able to attack all the layers and all the architecture of the skin in one go, and being able to cause that remodeling and give you a very reliable result in tightening, in collagen stimulation, fine lines, wrinkles, pores.
And acne scarring, you mentioned.
Acne scarring as well, we use it for quite a lot for our patients with acne scarring. It's very, very powerful. Was that all right?
Fab,
Okay, good.
Didn't feel a thing. But my eyeballs are numb. That is
It's a weird
really
thing, isn't
strange.
it? If we get you turned ever so slightly that way for me, I'm just going to work in little lines, okay?
I feel that more. But it's fine.
Can you explain the difference between NeoGen Plasma and radiofrequency microneedling like Morpheus 8?
Yeah. So we are fortunate, we've actually got both of those treatments in the clinic, so I can speak firsthand from my experience. Morpheus, or radiofrequency microneedling generally, is very different to NeoGen-based plasma for a few reasons. So firstly, when we're using Morpheus 8, we are drilling through the skin, we're creating a physical hole in the skin, and then the tip of the needle is where the energy is normally released. So with radiofrequency microneedling, we are going down to a certain depth and then releasing the energy in the fat or in the skin, wherever we want to. This is very different because actually this is hitting all of the skin layers. So Morpheus is not, for instance, it's not capable of being able to affect pigmentation.
Sure.
With the NeoGen, we're actually being able to get rid of some of the pigmentation because it's hitting all the layers all in one go.
And will there be multiple passes, or?
We're going to see how your skin kind of responds. It's looking pretty good at the moment. Is it hot?
But the left side always hurts more than the right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that's fine. If I can manage this side, I can then manage the other one. I really hadn't appreciated that before, that it's not just clearing the surface.
No, it's doing that.
Stimulating below, it's going right down. Yeah.
So what kind of patient is NeoGen Plasma good for?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question because it's the versatility of the machine is one of the things that I love about it. We can treat a range of different age groups. So we've got patients in their even in their teens coming for helping with some of their acne scarring, for instance, before it gets really bad. We've got patients in their 20s and 30s who just want a bit of tightening and just making sure there's little fine static lines are starting to form, all the way through to patients in their 80s who've got full-blown, ptotic features, or there's something that's starting to sag and they need help with that, or they've got sun damage or photo damage or anything else like that. So we actually treat a whole host of different pages, but we can also alter the depth and alter the energy level depending on what we're trying to treat. So that's really important. Also, we can treat different ethnicities. So this is another beauty of them, absolutely. So we can treat all skin types, and that is really powerful because there's not many machines that can say that. So we can treat we've got loads of patients from Afro-Caribbean origin, we've got Indian, Pakistani patients, through to Swedish patients, we've got everything. And we can adjust the levels to make sure it's safe for them, but we can treat everybody to some level at least.
All right.
Can you see the sheen?
Great. So I see the sheen, and this is how he can track exactly where the shots have all been. Wow, it's interesting. So it's a little bit red, and we're not quite finished yet, are we?
No.
Okay, very interesting.
What kind of results can you see with this?
So we found that the results are really, really reliable, which is not always the case with some energy-based devices. We tend to get the initial sloughing of the dead skin layer that doesn't need to be there. So that comes off normally, depending on the depth of treatment, somewhere between day 4 to day 10. And then so you get that instant kind of glow, which will happen, which is really beautiful. But then we know that there's a long-term change that happens. It takes about 3 months for the collagens to stimulate, for the tightening to occur. So any further changes that occur really slowly, and it's really nice to see that gradual change. As patients come in over 3 and 6 months, we see further kind of subtle changes that occur. They may not notice it themselves, but when we put the before and after photo together, normally the jaw-dropping moments when they kind of go, oh God, yeah, that's actually, I haven't noticed that at all.
Yeah.
It's just been really subtly in the background, it's been working away. So Shirley Ballas had a series of slightly more superficial treatments. So with the superficial treatments, we're still creating the trauma response, we're still getting the sloughing, it just doesn't give you the same amount of downtime, which can be really useful for some patients. So if they've got the patience to do it a few times.
And they'll get the same results in the end.
They get the same results in the end. We've seen quite a lot of really good tightening and contraction of the skin, which is really powerful. And that's what a lot of patients come in for anyway. We've seen good results with some scars we've done. Pigmentation has been fantastic. It kind of completely gets rid of kind of solar lentigos or kind of sunspots and stuff. They can get all wiped away.
Key question I'll be ready to ask is, what could it do for me? Because I'm going to jump up on the treatment bed and you're going to do a treatment for me, a medium depth one.
There are a few little things that we could potentially do, depending on what's bothering you. But I think one of the areas it's really, really good in is actually around the eyes.
Oh, yes, please.
So it's very, very different from other modalities because actually it's completely safe to do on the actual lid.
Yes, I've heard this.
Yeah, so we don't need corneal shields, we don't need anything at all. We can literally go and treat right up to the lash line on the upper lid as well.
Yeah.
And that's one of the USPs. Actually, this is very, very safe. And we can go right onto the eyelid, so we can go right to the lash line. There's not many treatments that can do that above and below on the lid. And the NeoGen can go right up and it can help with those little tiny crepey lines, the little bits of crepiness and the little nooks and crannies in the tissues. We can get in there and really help to tighten that off, which is what we're hoping to achieve.
I'm bothered by all the lines around here.
So we can definitely treat that area as well.
Are there any side effects of the treatment?
So with any kind of medical treatment, there's always a possibility of side effects that we have to weigh up the risk and benefit and make sure that it's right for that patient. In some skin types, if you were to use too much heat, there's a possibility of creating pigmentation, which we don't want to do. So it's making sure that whoever's doing the treatment knows what they're doing and can adjust the settings accordingly so that it's safe for that particular patient. So if you go for a superficial treatment, we don't even need anesthetic. We can just crack on and do it straight away on the skin. If we want to go for a bit of a deeper treatment, if we want to try and get some of that dermal contraction, then definitely we'll need a little bit of anesthesia. But that's just the case with anything. It's going to cause some kind of mild pain and discomfort. But we haven't had anybody who's chickened out just yet.
How long do these results last?
So typically we say to our patients that if they went through a medium depth treatment, we wouldn't need to do anything like that again for normally 18 to 24 months.
Oh, okay.
So again, with superficial treatments, just because they're being done more frequently, normally the longevity isn't exactly the same, just because it's not going down to the same depth. But we can monitor that as time goes on.
What is my face going to look like immediately after and over the next few days?
So it's interesting, just immediately after the treatment, you don't really see very much. You look a bit red. Where the NeoGen has hit the skin, the only clue that we've got is that you get a bit of a shiny sheen to the skin.
Okay.
So it looks a bit kind of polished, just on the bit where we've done it. But apart from that, there's a bit of redness and nothing else. And then over the course of the next few days, there's a quite reliable set of things that will happen. So the first thing would be, sometimes people get mild bits of swelling, especially around the eyes or around the mouth, if we go to the right depth. But again, it's as long as people are counselled for that initially and we've talked about it in the consultation, normally it's not a problem. So a little bit of swelling potentially, a little bit of redness, and then we start to get kind of little track marks forming, which is quite normal, and it happens across the face in like little lines. It goes a bit dark, goes a bit crusty, goes a bit peely, flaky.
Lovely.
And then it kind of comes off like a kind of a skin dandruff.
Okay.
And then normally by day 5, day 6, it's on its way out nearly. And by day 7, day 8, it should be completely back to normal.
Terrific.
So that was NeoGen Plasma. I'm looking a bit red and stripy. This is going to go tight and shiny, then it's going to go brown, then it'll slough off, and then my skin will look clear and amazing, I hope. Now, downtime and recovery. You can see immediately after my intense treatment, my skin is really red. After 3 days, there's a lot of swelling. I did know that it would be like this and it didn't hurt, but it doesn't look great for the first 6 days. So I did stay inside. After a month, there are just a few red marks left. And now, 6 weeks later, my skin looks really clear and fresh and my pores have almost vanished. Nick Sinclair came round to measure the results with the Visier imaging system, and it reckons now that my skin is 9 years younger than my real age, which is a result. And I will see the final skin tightening results in another 6 weeks once my collagen has remodeled itself.